obviously there's exceptions, and sometimes it's just like there's just so much work that has to get done, and it is what it is. But you should do your best, or I'm trying to do my best to just like say, okay, a bunch of things have come in. I'm still going to take an hour or two to have like dinner and be with kids and family. I'm still going to do that. And if I have to go and because those things are breaks. Like without those breaks, you're just going to run out of gas anyway. Like if you don't refill the tank at some point, it doesn't matter how much time you give it. If the time is spent like this in front of a screen with your eyes like that, and you're playing and you're just like tapping a MIDI controller over and over again,
Yeah.
And
I mean, we were talking before we did this podcast. The last time we spoke about there's just always something else to do, right? There's no end of things to be doing if you're a content creator, if you're a creative that's trying to put out different pieces of work into the world. You know what I mean? There's always another thing to do.
Yeah.
But you have to say like, these are the 3 things I'm going to get to today, or these are like this is the one project I'm working on today, or this hour, or whatever it is. You know?
Yeah, I just don't want things to take over and be all consuming, no matter how much is required of them. I think you get more out of it if you say, okay, so like I'll get good night's sleep. I'm not going to just like, I still do it. I still have these like late nights, but that's also because it's on me, because I've pushed things till the point where like, okay, I have to get to this. But I'm going to try my best over the next years, like going into this, 2021, to just make sure that better to get a good night's sleep, wake up super early when things are more fluid and, flow better. And then I'll do it then. And then that's okay. Not let everything go to the wayside just because something, comes in front of you.
Yeah, that really resonates with me. Wait, so you were talking about all the different platforms and how you're using them in different ways.
Sure.
I think this could be super helpful for the audience. Tell me a bit about what you're using and why you're using it, like, or I guess how you're using it and why you're using it for that thing, Right.
Sure. This is a big one because I feel like I have a lot to say about this because I come from, similar to production. I came at production and came to become a producer from a technophobic place, like technology phobic place. I was not a producer. When I was coming up as a musician, I was like, all that engineering, knobs and button pushing stuff and software stuff, that'll be for somebody else one day. Like, I'm just going to play bass and sing and write some music and perform. Like, that's me. And I labeled myself in that way. And eventually, obviously, that all changed and I became and identify as a producer today. And it's similar with social media. I, for a long time, just wrote it off as, you know what? This is not my generation. I didn't grow up with this. Facebook came when I was already in college. I'm not like these younger kids who just know what to do with it. And I think to me, I looked at it as, it was just always, I just always had a very difficult time struggling with how to approach this, how to feel like it was me or be authentic with it. And I think specifically with musicians and social media, there's a real challenge. At least I found it for myself and with the band and stuff. We always kind of felt like this feels yucky. It feels like promo. It feels like I just want to, what you want is like, I think it's because as musicians, we want to write and create the best music we can. And we want to put on the best show we can, whatever you're doing musically. And then it's hard to then get on these things and ask people to come, hey, check it out. New song on like Spotify, come check out our show. Every time I would approach social media, it was like, to make an announcement from a promotional angle about something I've already created. So to come check it out. And what I was missing fundamentally was that these are the platforms to create on. They are not places to tell people about what you've created. So I was not looking at them correctly as what they're meant to be, which is places to create content. And it seems so obvious, but I think especially for musicians, it's not, because our medium has always been the studio, the DAW, that's where we're creating. And then we're looking at these social media platforms as social media, not places to be creative. And that's been the big mistake. And for a long time, and they all operate slightly differently, and I can sort of shed what I've kind of learned about them over the past year. But generally speaking, like, these are not places to tell people where to come check you out on stage somewhere. They are a stage. They're a digital stage to feature what you're doing. And I don't know why it took so long. That idea was probably staring at me in the face for a long time, but I could never, the phone thing, hey guys, come check out, blah, 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 blah. It wasn't until I started doing comedic content that I realized, and I think for comedy, it's a little easier because the stuff you're making is in and of itself on the platforms. You know, you're making that creative stuff on the platform. It's not like I'm recording sketch comedy albums and then telling fans on platforms to come check out those albums or those videos. I'm putting the videos on the platforms. So it's a little bit, they go a little more hand in hand. So I think that's what it was. But it was through that process it was able to shine sort of a mirror or a light on how these platforms work and how you as a creator or musician can benefit the most from them. You have to create stuff and content that is fitting to the platform, that works there, that people, when they go to your profile, they don't see a bunch of announcements for shows and music to check out. They see stuff that entertains them and moves them right away. Now, the challenge there is it's a ton of work to learn a whole new set of skills in the form of video creation, because these are all essentially, a lot of them are from Instagram, and especially TikTok are video creation platforms. But that's the landscape you're in, and that's what you have to deal with. You have to contend with learning, just like with producing. Like for a long time, the songwriter could just always rely on an engineer to record their stuff. There was no way for the songwriter. Nobody expected songwriters to record their own music. Now you have it in front of you. It's an obligation. And now I would say it's an obligation. Exactly. Yeah. And now, like, you don't have to buy a DSLR expensive $1,500 camera. You just use the phone you already have and start making stuff. You know, that was, to me, I was always like, what, you know, that's what's demanded of you if you want to try to get out there and reach an audience. I always felt like for a long time, the handicap was, well, if you watch YouTube, it's so high resolution, the production and everything, man, you need a real budget to like make stuff that's worth watching on YouTube. And luckily, I think where the tides have gone is that TikTok and now Instagram and stuff has gone much more low resolution, but still high quality. Like the content itself is fun and entertaining, but it's gotten more raw and handheld. And that aesthetic has become pretty popular. People actually prefer that than these slickly produced videos where everything is super, you know, high production quality. To me, that was always seemed like a barrier. And I think for YouTube, it's still the case that it's high production quality, but I could get into that too. But I don't want to, without, just to put a pause in that thought, I think fundamentally...
YouTube, you got to compete with like the Casey Neistats of the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I just think before I get into what each platform I think could probably benefit from in terms of what to create for each one, it's just important to note that these platforms are stages and channels to put out cool things as musicians, whether you're a comic, a musician, any kind of creator. They're not a place to tell people about your stuff. And I always could never understand that for a long time. I totally missed the mark on that, which was like, everyone's like, you know, you want to be authentic and branding and all this, you know, nonsense. I didn't really understand what is branding and marketing and connecting and building an audience. And then it's like everyone's talking about, how do I get more followers? How do I get more followers? I just want to get more followers. But it's not worth getting any more followers if what they're coming to see isn't worth watching. You have to figure out, and that's a really hard thing, you know? It's a really difficult thing to figure out what your sort of aesthetic and style is on these platforms. So it's about making good shit every day. That's the hardest thing. Like everyone's talking about all these hacks, how to grow your Instagram, how to go to this, how to go to that. It's like, make good things every single day. Those two things enough. Making good things that are actually, to me, that either make people laugh or smile or move them, and doing it consistently are the two hardest things. And if you don't have any of those two pillars, like, it will crumble. It doesn't matter how much algorithm hack. It doesn't matter what you put into it. It doesn't matter about paid promo. I don't think none of that matters if what's at the fundamentals are not, you know, strong yet.
Yeah.
You know, it's like producing a song that might not be the strongest song. You can polish a turd, so to speak. It's like you can put all the fanciest plugins on a song that if it doesn't feel right at its melody and lyric at its core, there's nothing you can do to it. You know, same thing with social media. The hardest thing to identify is, are you making good stuff every single day? So
how do you make good stuff every single day? Like, how do you keep that? Like, do you write shit down? Do you
start by making bad stuff and mediocre stuff every single day until something cues you in, like anything. Another thing, just to contrast my old approach and how I looked at social media, was I thought you put all of this stake into something, you know, and we've all been there. Like, you make this great video or this great song and like, we've worked so hard, and then you put it out on social media and nothing happens. You're like, oh my God, it got like no views. I don't get it. Everyone I showed this to on an individual level is loving it. Like, and I love it. We love it. We're so proud of it. Why is it not getting anywhere? And I think it's because these platforms are like venues that they want you to be a frequent creator there. They're not just going to give you all this attention. And this kind of speaks to those algorithm stuff. They're about you building a following so that you're on the app a lot and you're getting people to come to this app. It's like a club. You show up at a club and no one knows who you are, no matter how good your songs are, or you had a band back in a different state and now you're in a new town and you come in. If the club owner doesn't know who you are, like, you got to prove your worth and like put in your time and play regularly and then get that residency and start bringing people to the club. Imagine Instagram was a physical space. It's like you don't just walk into the building and say, hey, I got a song. I want everyone who you are connected to Instagram to love it. It's like, well, show me, prove it to me. Bring them in here, have them stay, have them engage with the content, have them, know who you are and connect to you. So back to your question, how to make good things every day is to not make good things.
Wait, before you get to that, I would say like the ultimate example of what you're talking about for artists is like, the musician who works so hard on a single, puts in all these hours, hires a good mixing engineer, mastering engineer. We're done. Okay. Here's an image on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
The platform of YouTube is for videos. It's not for images of music.
Right.
So, like, I feel like that's the ultimate example of
right. So that's a technical problem, I would say. It's a technical mistake. But ultimately, YouTube isn't about, those little viral moments that happen are not really the goal, I don't think. It's about building up a slow, steady subscriber base of loyal people who consume your content regularly. And then you get these little viral, like, blips along the way. That's generally what happens. It's not every once in a while a crazy, weird cat video or something funny will go up and take off. But that's not something you can plan for or strategize around. People see that and they say, okay, I'm going to try to create my viral video. But it's really about you're building up a base of people over time, gradually.
Right.
And you're by putting in the work, and then every once in a while something will strike because you're so consistent and you're putting out stuff and your quality of your content keeps improving. That's sort of what happens. I would say it's an important question. Like, so how do you make good stuff every day? My story with TikTok was and I'll speak to TikTok now because that's what has sort of educated me. I've learned a lot about TikTok itself, and it's taught me a little bit about this sort of wake-up call moment I had with other social media things. And I don't fancy myself to be any kind of guru or someone who's going to be like, I'm going to tell you how to get, that's exactly the opposite. It's like how to get 1,000 subscribers in 1 month. It's just, I just can only share what I think to my best instincts these platforms are about. And I've had a little more growth and success over the past year in specific areas with them. And ever since I started viewing them as content creation vehicles and, places to show what you're doing, things have been better, and I've been sort of understanding them a little better. So January 2020, TikTok. Everyone's like, go to TikTok, try that one. I'm like, okay, here's a new one. It still feels semi-early. It's not, it's totally taking over the world, but it's not a household name yet. Like you say TikTok at January in 2020, if you said TikTok to anybody, they'd be like, what's that one? Is that new? What is it? Was still in that. So I didn't want to miss that opportunity. So I opened it up, I started it, and of course I hated it that first week. I'm like, oh. Everyone has that experience with any new platform, but especially TikTok. Everyone can attest to hating it, then kind of liking it, then being obsessed with it. And I'm sort of totally down with TikTok right now. And I said, let me just try and post 5 days a week. Monday through Friday, every weekday, I'm going to try to post one thing. And I'm going to open it up, and maybe I'll do some impressions. I'll try some musical bits. And see where it goes. I started in 2019. The first content creation style video stuff I was doing, like video creation, was using GoPros, doing looping in my studio. And it was very, very painful. I did not know how to use video editing software so well. So I started using Final Cut, forcing myself through those early, workouts. It's like fitness, or like playing guitar. It's like your fingers, there's no way I'm going to be able to ever play the C chord. I just can't do it. And most people say, forget it. I know that in the early days of learning instruments, but eventually all of a sudden your fingers just start to do it, just like anything. So the same was true with video editing. Same happened with music when I was learning how to produce. So I started using Final Cut, forcing myself through it. First iMovie, then Final Cut quickly because they were close enough to jump to that. And I started in 2019, recording myself just looping, and it was a long, arduous process, setting up the shot. It looked terrible, but I didn't even know how bad it looked. In retrospect, I get why, but I had no idea, no concept of lighting, no concept of anything. I was just kind of recording the audio, syncing it to video. And it was those kinds of things I was throwing onto TikTok, mixed with impressions. Occasionally, I just do an impression of who knows. I would just do any random, Gilbert Gottfried. I'd throw it up in the air. Okay! Throw it up in the air. Whatever. But doing it consistently and getting whatever views I would get. A couple 100 views here, a couple 50, 80, whatever. Not much. But I was doing it every day during the week and taking a break for the weekend.